whether we should even share a message or not, or whether we should just continue worshiping and praising God and praying. But I believe that there's something that God would like us to talk about. There are quite a few things that we have to cover this morning. But starting point is, what's happening in 2 weeks? Huh? You're not even aware. Congress is in 2 weeks. Are you prepared for Congress? Are you? How do you prepare for Congress? What is Congress all about? What's supposed to happen during Congress, before Congress, after Congress? Thank you. And how do you prepare for it? Congress is supposed to be a gathering of the tribes when we all come back together, so we ensure we're on the same page, so we can receive from the one God has given the vision for the house. And then we can also hear back from one another. It's also a time for us to reconnect, because there are some people who took off from Anthony and are now in Ajah or wherever. And so we begin to relate as family. So, can you get the first slide on the screen, please? When we're talking about Congress and talking about the things we want to do, the message today is titled, A Different Spirit. A Different Spirit. So put up that first slide, please. If we can't see it, you may have to turn down the lights in the house so that we can all read it. By the way, do we all follow the news? Are you aware that this morning a cure has been found for Ebola? So you didn't follow, you didn't know that a cure has been found for Ebola? Huh? Okay. Interesting. I'll be telling you more as we go along. Can we read it? It says, if you found a cure for cancer, wouldn't it be inconceivable to hide it from the rest of mankind? How much more inconceivable to keep silent the cure from the eternal wages of death? I was watching something on YouTube this last week about a man who was in a plane accident. If you see his face, it has been burnt, and he's had hundreds, or not, maybe not hundreds, but a lot of reconstructive surgery. The man tells us that he actually died, and he was headed to hell when something saved him. Some of these stories and testimonies about near-death experiences, you have to be very careful. But I checked and I listened to the man's testimony, and there's nothing he said that was contrary to the Word of God. But one of the things he said about hell is that he was constantly aware as he was slipping away into eternity that there was this darkness, this blackness on the side of him, but that there was another light that was brighter than a million suns. But yet he was able to look into that light, and that light was what was drawing him. But that as that light was drawing him, the blackness, the darkness of eternity, that no one mentioned anything to him, but he just knew it was hell. And that the horror of that thing was so overwhelming that one of the things he took away from it is that you don't want anyone to go to that horror of hell. Not Hitler, not Osama bin Laden, not Saddam. Saddam was alive at the time that this guy was talking about his experience. If you read about the horrors of hell, you don't wish it upon your enemy. Talk less of your neighbors and your family. Now I'm going somewhere with this illustration. I said a cure for Ebola had been found this morning. Now, if we have the cure for Ebola and we don't tell the rest of the world, how wicked are we? The cure for Ebola, by the way, is Jesus Christ. Okay. Now, if one scientist or one person can discover the cure for cancer, would it not be uttermost wickedness for him to keep that cure to himself? So this man who gave this quotation, Dave Davison, he's wondering why we Christians are silent about our Jesus. I look at Living Waters and I see so many chairs that should be filled. Every week, when we say we're welcoming new guests, we welcome maybe one or two. But if each one of us gets one person, this place will be filled to overflowing. We're getting ready for Congress. How many people have you invited for Congress? Or are we preaching the false gospel here? If indeed the true gospel is being preached at Living Waters, then no one should ginger you up to invite people. It should come naturally. Because you are like, look, people, you are dying. Come and hear the truth. Come and hear the truth. Move to the next slide, please. Oswald J. Smith says, any church that is not seriously involved in helping fulfill the Great Commission has forfeited its biblical right to exist. So any church that exists for having programs, any church that exists for building parishes, any church that exists for teaching only prosperity and all the other things, but does not teach. By the way, do we know what the Great Commission is? What's the Great Commission? Go into all the world, preach the gospel to all nations. Are we doing it? Is that our main mission at Living Waters? Is that all we're about? When pastor is sweating, preaching, teaching, when Pastors Pistola and Henry and Ofon and all the other teachers in the Bible Academy are teaching us all the principles of the kingdom, it's in fulfillment of the Great Commission that God has given to us. And if we're not doing that, then it's better we shut down and everybody go to their homes. Amen. Next slide, please. Okay. The one at the top is what I want us to focus on. Because this is one of the things that stops us from sharing the gospel. And this is part of what has driven the messages in this season, that we need to go back to the oracles, the first oracles, the things that God is speaking to us about. You see, God is looking, that first quotation there, he's not looking for people who will nibble at the possible things. Where we're talking about, we want to build an apostolic center. If we're going from here to a tent that's double this size, we're nibbling at the possible. But when we want to be grabbers of the impossible, that's when we will decide, listen, no matter how many they are in Chibok, we're able to resettle them in the south. It's when we go with what Deacon Oke has come up with, that drawing, and we're like, it doesn't matter how many we are. With our God, we shall do valiantly. What are the things that are holding you back? What kind of spirit do you have? Do you have a spirit from the true living God? Because if you do, then you are able to take on anything. We need to go beyond all this little. I don't want to get to the end of my life and then be full of regrets for the things I didn't do. I read a book by a man named John Maxwell, where he interviewed people in an old people's home. And they were asking all of them one question: what is your biggest regret in life? For people who are 85, 90, all of those who are waiting for death. Do you know what 90% of them said? They said, my biggest regret in life is that I did not take more risks when I was younger. So they've gotten to the end of their life. Now they can't take those risks because they are too old. But some of us are in the prime of our lives, and we've held ourselves bound in bondage because of fear. We are afraid to fail. Anyone who is sleeping, I'll tell you to stand up. Oh, you know who I'm talking to. I'm just telling you, you are dancing and jumping up and down. Praise God. So anyone you see standing, just know that they were sleeping. I'll just come up to you and just say, sister, please stand, or brother. Okay. So Oswald J. Smith said also that no one has the right to hear the gospel twice. while there remains someone who has not heard it once. I'm amazed at churches in Nigeria and in the US, the two places I have exposure to. Every time a pastor comes and says, God has sent me to open a church, he has never said, one time God told me to go to Eritrea. They've never once said, God told me to go to Kosovo, or he told me to go to Afghanistan. It's always, God is sending you from Nigeria to America. There are more than enough churches in America. There are more than enough churches in Nigeria. Who is going into the regions in Nigeria where they don't wear clothes? One missionary I spoke with said the journey to his mission tribe in Nigeria takes 4 days. You go by bus to one point, then you go by bike to another point, motorcycle. Then you get to a point where you have to go by canoe. And finally, you now go on foot to get to these mountainous people where they still don't wear clothes. I'm like, are you serious? He said, yes, they don't wear clothes. So I asked him, so how do you relate among them? Do you go naked also? He said, no, that once they see him, they know that he's a stranger. But that when he says they don't wear clothes, it's that occasionally they wear clothes and they wear some things, but that when they have their festivals, the major festivals, they have to come naked. So, Oga, who asked you to jump ahead? Are we back there? No one has the right to hear the gospel twice when some people have not heard it one time. What are we doing about fulfilling the Great Commission? When we have events like Tehillah, or we're having events like Congress and things like that, it's an opportunity for people who are not bold enough to share the gospel to invite people to come and hear the truth. So, I'm going to charge everybody in this hall today. Can everybody breathe in and breathe out? Breathe in, breathe out. So we all have breath. As you have breath, I'm going to ask you to make a pledge, raise your right hand, that you will bring, I didn't say invite, you will bring someone to church next week Sunday. Let me see your right hand. Everyone in here, I'm not asking you. Raise your right hand and make that pledge to God. I'm not asking for people who are going to bring. Raise your right hand, make a pledge to God that I'm going to bring someone to. Some people are looking at me. It's not a request, it's an instruction. You must make it happen. Desola, where's your right hand? Who is that brother next to you? Raise your right hand. Yes, it's an instruction. You must bring someone. Whether you're going to flog them into church or go and bring them in your car, give them Okada money. Sister, why is your hand not up? You must bring someone to church next week, Sunday. This is, for the orphans, it's not one person you share between you. It's husband bring one person, wife bring one person. Do you know that if I was standing here with Bill Gates or with President Goodluck Jonathan, and I said, for every person you bring, you'll get 1 million naira. Some people will bring 10 people. But do you know that in the eyes of Jesus, one soul is worth more than 10 million naira? That's why I have no problem with us having a church program that costs any amount of money. It's not an issue at all. If we have a program that costs us 200 million naira and one soul comes, it's worth it. Because Jesus himself said, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? So in the eyes of Jesus, when you weigh one human soul, it's heavier than the entire world on the other side. Going back on, please share that last slide. Go on, it's not fully loaded. Please load it properly. Can we all see what's on the screen? You can see it clearly. Apostle Paul said in Acts chapter 20, verse 27, he said, for I have not shunned to declare unto you the entire gospel. I have not shunned to declare unto you the whole counsel of the Lord. He was speaking to the churches in Asia. The letters to the Galatians, the Ephesians, the Colossians, the Philippians. That's the church that Paul the apostle was preaching to. As we speak today, those churches, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and in the book of Philemon, they are in present-day Turkey, which is 99% Muslim. The church that Paul preached to has been entirely consumed by the message of Islam. What chance do we have in Nigeria if we preach the false gospel? I hope you understand that Nigeria is at war. I hope you understand that some of the news that we read in newspapers is filtered news. It's not the real news. Our security man had to relocate his entire family from that Chibok area. He moved them to another village. After about how many days did he come back to us? Less than a week. The village where he relocated, his mother, his sisters, and all that, was overrun. So he had to bring his wife from the village down to Lagos. Presently, that young girl is living in Lagos now. What he said to us is that all the young men have gone because they are the first ones. Those ones, they just line them up and slaughter them by a pit. The young women, they carry them off, make them sex slaves. Do you, in your wildest imagination, think that those girls that were taken from Chibok have not been touched or molested by these men? Let's make it real. Do you think they're just taking them, oh, all of you, Vestal virgins, you eat? What do you think they're using those girls for? Do you understand that rape is one of the weapons of war? So by forcefully advancing their gospel, part of their warped thinking is to impregnate those girls so that they will bring up children who are Islamists for them. And we are sitting in Lagos having a party. We're not understanding that this thing is at our doorstep. When I was coming to church this morning and I was driving by, I started counting all the Okada riders. Why do you think I was counting them? Huh? Sorry? They are Muslims, most of them. Whenever and if ever the trouble hits, do you think they need to import soldiers to come and fight us in Lagos? They are all around us. Or we hire them as megads, drivers, gardeners, Okada riders. Until we wake up and recognize that this is war, that our very lives depend on it, and that the lives of our children depend on it. Listen, some of us are so short-sighted. You're sending your kids to all the best schools, you are doing all of these things, and you are ignoring the tinder box that's ready to explode right next to you. These children, these madmen don't care whether you attend Corona or St. Saviour's. A neck is a neck, a machete is a machete. Have you seen some of the videos on YouTube? These things are happening in Nigeria. Some of these things we read about, and the church has been giving warning. They've told people run the mile under 4 minutes. Even school children run it these days. Why? Because someone had limited themselves but had broken the limitation. Within 2 years of that record had been run or equaled by, I think, 10 different people. Have you seen an elephant before that has been used by a circus? Has anyone ever seen an elephant? If you haven't observed it, all they do is they put a chain on the elephant's leg, and they put that chain on a peg in the ground. Even me, a human being, can remove that peg. Why does the elephant remain there? Because the elephant has gotten it into his head that it cannot be done. What they do is when the elephant is still young, as soon as the elephant is born, they put a chain around the elephant's one of the legs and tie it to a big rock or something that elephant can't move. So as the elephant is growing up, they keep on tying it to a bigger thing. So the elephant has been trained to believe that anytime I see this chain, I can't move beyond the point where the chain is. And so you see full-grown elephants that are being held by a peg in the ground. Living waters, until we have a different spirit and refuse to be held bound by all the things that are holding people bound, we won't achieve what God said. If you look at Esther, the things that she did defied convention. Sir Isaac Newton, Christopher Columbus, they told Columbus, when you get to the edge of the world, you will fall over. In 1492, he went around the world. John F. Kennedy told NASA, the space agents for the US, he gave a speech in 1962. He said, "It is my stated objective that before the end of this decade, the US will take a man to the moon and return him to the earth safely." It happened in 1969. But up to that point, the USSR were the champions in the space race. They had the first asteroid in space. They had the first spaceman in space. They put the first dog in space. The US was behind. But the US, because of John F. Kennedy, said, "We are going to do this thing." Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during the Second World War, when Hitler had overrun almost all of Europe, it was Winston Churchill who stood up and said, "We must never give up. Never, never, never. We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them on the streets. We will fight them in the air." And he turned around the whole attitude, the whole spirit of the nation. Most of these people that I've mentioned are not Christians. How much more you who have the Spirit of the living God? Philippians 4:13 says, "I can do what? Some things. A few things." What? Yes. I can do all things. We have testimonies of Christians who have attempted great things for God and accomplished great things for God. Last slide, please. See, your heart is the seat of all of these things that we're trying to pass across to you. If your spirit is not right, nothing you accomplish can ever be right. But if your spirit is right and God be God, then you cannot fail. I like talking to younger people because I can pass across the benefit of some of the mistakes I made and some of the experiences I've picked up in life. I want someone in Living Waters today to get it into their spirit, not just in your head, but get it into your spirit that with God I cannot fail. You must have a different spirit. You must have a different attitude. You must have a different outlook on life. You can't give in to the status quo. The fear that is coming from Boko Haram or Ebola or this or that. Do you know why it was impossible for Joseph to die in captivity? It's because it was in line with the plan of God. Joseph had to remain alive in prison so that he will be promoted to prime minister. Because when he becomes prime minister, through him he would keep alive the nation of Israel. Because the nation of Israel must be kept alive, Judah of necessity must be kept alive. As Judah was kept alive, the lineage through which Jesus Christ will come had to be kept alive. So some of you, when you understand your plan, when you understand your place in the plan of God, you're not worried about Ebola. You're not doing stupid things by going to tempt God, but you are not ruled by fear. You're not worried about Boko Haram because you know God has a plan for me. Of this I'm sure. Jesus, you are my firm foundation. I know I'm going somewhere. And I know that in you I am secure. When you see how God operates, you see how God's mind is, you will change your attitude towards him. Even an unbeliever king, King Abimelech, when he made a wrong decision, because his heart was right, God protected him from evil. Don't you think God can protect you from evil? Don't you think God has got your back? Don't you understand that with him, once you have a different spirit, even the sky is not your limit? That's what I want to leave us with today. Understand that with him, there is a plan, there is a process, there is a timing. All I need to do is get right with God. All I need to do is go back to him and find out, what do you want from me? And I'm fine. Let's pray for ourselves this morning. I want you to pray first of all for your heart. Pray for your heart. Ask God to help you. The psalmist prayed in Psalm 51, in verse 10, he said, "Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me." So pray for your heart. Ask God to touch your heart this morning. Ask him to change your heart. And if you're in the auditorium, you have not yet made a decision to come and serve the living God, I'm giving you an opportunity now to come to know God. If you've never at any point in time given your life to Christ, just signify it to me. We will pray together. And God will begin to take you from where you are to where he wants you to be. If there's anyone here who wants to make a rededication or a pledge to God, you don't have to come out. You can just stand where you are and just tell God, this is what I decide to do for you today. Giving you things he's asked you to do.